Alright, hi. First vlog, the pilot of The Sopranos. I guess you can call it Ducks and Depression, other if you don't want to call it the pilot. I don't really know where to start. There's a lot going on, but it's also really simplistic. Full disclosure, I did watch this episode once before. It's the only episode of The Sopranos I've seen. Watched it years ago, checked it out from the library, and I remember not liking it at all. So I never returned to the series. And it's been like 10 years, and my friend said that actually the pilot, it's a good thing I didn't like it because the show gets way the hell better. Watching it again, it's better than I thought it was. Alright, so this is the episode where Tony goes to see a shrink because he passed out when some ducks flew away, and he gets put on Prozac. In the meantime, his nephew Christopher is doing all kinds of little odd jobs to make the business go right. They gotta kill some Russian dude to make their drug business work. They gotta blow up a restaurant to avoid a murder taking place there because they like the guy who runs the restaurant, and the murder would like fuck up his insurance premiums. No, the murder would fuck up his clientele, so it's better to blow it up so he can get the insurance. Jesus. There's some kind of condominium thing or some kind of like real estate thing that went through. They didn't really explain that very much. And then most of the show is about Tony's family, which is the metaphor of the ducks, Rosebud. It's a little heavy-handed, the symbolism of it. Honestly, that's kind of my summation of like the whole pilot episode. Boy, is it heavy-handed. Some of it works, like all the Goodfellas references, the Godfather references. It's nice they're paying homage, paying tribute. It's incredibly 90s, and most of the time that works out. The opening credit sequence, I remember that sequence just from pop culture growing up. The way they talk is very, them, those, use guys, we gotta take care of it over here. It's fun. Then there's shit like, you've got mail and the crappy computers, and it's very dated. But it works okay. I'm interested. I want to watch the next episode. I like Tony. If I had to pick a favorite scene, weirdly enough, it's probably the scene with him and his daughter in the church. There's a sequence where, there's a subplot going on where his teenage daughter, Melody, or something like that, I can't remember her name. I'm sure I'll get yelled at by people who know the show. She doesn't like her mother anymore because she's a teenager, which that's really lame, frustrating writing. Give me a reason why you don't like your mother anymore. But anyway, the daughter's mad at the mother, so Tony takes her to volleyball game, and they're hanging out by themselves, and they start to have a conversation about why don't you like your mom anymore, but instead Tony sees this church, and they go in and sit down, and Tony talks about how he hasn't been in there since he was a kid, and that his grandfather, her great-grandfather, and his uncle, or his brother, sorry, built the church, and how two guys who couldn't, they just came to America from Italy. They probably didn't speak English. They couldn't design the place. They weren't educated, but they knew how to build it. And there's something to that, the idea of building something up. That's a really nice scene. Gandolfini's brilliant. I've loved Gandolfini for years, and I've never seen the show. And that's his claim to fame. So obviously, I was gonna like the show just because I love Gandolfini. The rest of the cast, I like Edie Valco. I've been a huge fan of Oz. That's my HBO show. Most people think about classic HBO. They go to Sopranos. I'm a bigger fan of Oz. I think it's way more interesting and engaging. That's why I watched it. It seemed more like an interesting idea. The whole idea of prison as opposed to the mob. I've seen the mob. They mentioned it in the show. Godfather 2 and Godfather 1 and Goodfellas, and I don't know how you can get better than those. We'll see. I doubt that it's going to be better. Sorry, the TV's over there. That's why I keep looking. I got it freeze-framed on an image. I doubt it's going to get better, or maybe even... I don't think it's going to come close to Goodfellas or Godfather, but... it'll probably be a pretty good show. Edie Valco's brilliant. Michael Imperioli's awesome. The rest of the cast is just, a bunch of... They're everyman, Italian stereotypes that you've seen in all kinds of stuff. They're all good. It's frustrating because the show is clearly about the family. That's the metaphor. The family is both the mob and the actual family. And the mob stuff is incredibly well done. Even if it is a little bit derivative, incredibly derivative. That's the interesting part. I do like hanging out with these guys. I like seeing how Tony interacts in the 90s. the family stuff, you know, the daughter doesn't like the mother, and Tony's mother is a really annoying character, and ugh, I've seen it. It's frustrating. Ugh. There's this thing that happens in really, really great, like, dark, dramatic TV shows with strong male leads where their wife is usually the weakest character on the show, and she gets, like, equal billing and equal screen time. Like, if you look at Mad Men, the first 3 seasons, which is all I've watched of Mad Men, Don Draper's wife is so boring, and, like, I haven't seen Breaking Bad, but I've heard that Walter White's wife is really boring. And even though I love Edie Valco, her plot in this episode is so annoying. I just want to move on, get back to the mob stuff. Like, you can't open an episode, you can't open a series with this brilliant, you know, they chase a guy down with a car, and they run him over, and they beat the shit out of him, and you get all of this stuff going on, and then cut to, like, my 13-year-old doesn't like me anymore for no reason. That's really boring stuff. And then I guess the only other thing to talk about is the framing device of Tony going to the shrink. Don't like it. I like Lorraine Bracco. She's in Goodfellas. I like her, but I don't like that as a framing device. It'd be good for, like, a play, you know, or maybe even, like, a film that doesn't cut away. Like, I like the idea of 2 characters in a room talking, and it's a nice idea, you know, a mob boss or a gangster goes to a shrink, and he can't really tell you what's going on. That's a nice idea. But as a framing device, it's really frustrating, and I hope the whole series isn't like that. I imagine probably the first season will be. But I really hope it gets away from that framing device. I've heard, like, again, Breaking Bad, spoilers for Breaking Bad if anyone hasn't seen it. I haven't seen it, but I've heard that, like, the premise of Breaking Bad is that he's dying of cancer and decides to become a drug dealer. But I've been told that, like, he's completely cured of cancer by the end of the first season. Like, that stops being the driving force. So I hope that the whole, I'm going to go see a shrink thing is done quickly, even though I like Lorraine Bracco. So yeah, I'm excited for the next episode. I like that little scene at the end with Tony's mother and his uncle about Tony might have to be taken care of, something has to be done. That's a nice little lead-in, and it's shot well, which, I mean, I can get into how it looks. It's a little bit too shaky cam, handheld at times, which is very 90s. You know, in the moment, we're so real, and oh, look over here, and you're very present. It's a very 90s thing to do. Oz has the same issue. A lot of handheld in Oz, but when it calms down, and like the last shot's really well done. It's just a simple little pan from the family going inside and then back to the empty pool, because the metaphor, the ducks and the metaphor, it's really well shot. Also, I guess the last thing to note is that David Chase created the show, of course, he wrote the episode, but I've never seen a show written and directed by the same guy. I don't think. I think maybe Alan Ball might have done it for 6 Feet Under, but I don't think I've ever seen a show, because I never watched 6 Feet Under, I don't think I've ever seen a show where the writer and the director were the same guy from the beginning. Even Kurt Sutter with Sons of Anarchy didn't start directing until the finale, I'm pretty sure. So that's pretty cool. I like that The Sopranos is written and directed by one guy. And there's lots of really funny lines in it. There's, you know, some clever wordplay. So I'm going to keep going. And, yeah, I guess that's it. And I'll see you next time in episode 2. The episode of which I don't remember the title of. So hope you enjoy. And, yep, see you next time. TTFN.